Remind you to declare any interest, financial or otherwise, just as we move through today's business. Okay, just with regards to apologies, we've received an apology from Mr. Kinahan and also Mr. Sheehan, and we have an apology for lateness from Mr. Hazard. So that's covered. Moving then to Chair's business. Obviously, the DFP Minister's budget statement indicated that we were to receive 147 million of capital expenditure plus a resource allocation of 145 million. However, the tables and statement also show that DE's resource budget was to be reduced by 94 million from the baseline position. The Finance Minister has also referred to a significant liability associated with increases in employers' contributions to employee pension schemes. And also there was a reference to an OECD governance review. The Committee for Finance and Personnel is seeking responses from committees on their department's budget plans by the first week in December, which really isn't a lot of time. Now the committee's asked DE to brief on the budget on the 3rd of December. And I think we are having Assembly Research to come up to speak to us then on the 19th of November. So our members contend that we may be right to DE just to seek some clarification around the budget, including the OECD review just prior to that, so at least then we can have some sort of focus to what we want to discuss, and our comments then they're to be forwarded to the Committee for Finance and Personnel. Members, any thoughts on that, or content that we do that? Okay. Thank you. Obviously, yesterday we had a statement by the Minister on post-primary Irish medium education strategy report. There was a lot of information there, which obviously we were only really privy to yesterday morning. So the Minister did give a commitment questions that he would come. He and or his officials to speak to us, particularly around what this is going to mean. But I think it would be useful for us to get a copy of the terms of reference of that review as well. So our members content we do that. He also announced a review of integrated education. So again, we might want to get some information around the terms of reference for that too.
Yeah. All happening there.
Everything's happening, so all systems go. Okay.
Turbocharged, yeah.
Move then to the draft minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of October. Are members content that they are an accurate reflection of that meeting?
Yep. Great.
Okay, thank you. Move then to our matters arising, and it's our inquiry into shared and integrated education. There's a cover note by the clerk at page 149, and all the written submissions are now on your SkyDrive Pro link. So if members are content that we tweet and publish that on our website or whatever it is we need to do. It's also. Are we due to receive further submissions? Because I noticed that not all the educational library boards have made a submission.
That's a good question, Chair. We've had something from Western and Northeastern. I know that the QUB, the Shared Education Programme, are going to give something to us later in November, because we'd already arranged that they would come and give an oral submission. We've had about 83 submissions, which is a lot. It's about double what we got for the ETI inquiry. So I am expecting there might be a couple more, so if he's content to accept late ones.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think it'd be important to receive those, but could you maybe just prompt the boards that haven't come back to us, just to see if there is a submission on its way? If we're content with that. I'm not sure if anyone else has noticed anything in relation to that they want to comment. No. Okay. The next item is teachers' pensions. It's page 161. We have a submission from NASUWT in respect of the changes. The correspondence, just to note, if you're happy, the correspondence, and we're going to have an informal meeting with teaching unions just in respect of this on Tuesday, the 18th of November at 1 p.m. just in Parliament buildings. Do members maybe want to make any comment on that? Would it be usual to have a joint submission from teachers' unions, or?
I think certainly for the education bill, what the committee actually did was met with a number of, it was actually the non-teaching unions in that case. They just came around and had a chat. I understand that there isn't actually a joint NITC response to the pension changes, so that the 5 unions, they'll say, they'll put across, what I've asked them to do is to give members of their concerns, what is a very complicated and involved issue, in order to, because as the Chair is aware, in due course we'll see a number of statutory rules around it in order to inform members' understanding. That the Chair had suggested that we have this informal meeting, so Tuesday 18th is the plan at about lunchtime.
But it's not unusual not to have a joint position with regards to this?
I think in terms of pensions that this has been the position, but yeah, certainly in terms of the last education bill, as I recall, there was a joint submission from NITC. Then I think we also received some submissions from those unions who are members of NITC as well, so not that unusual.
Okay. Well, if you wish to put that in your diary, just as a note of that meeting. DE have also advised that they're going to put out another consultation on the changes to NITPS, and this relates to the closure of the old NITPS and the opening of the new scheme. The department wishes to avoid unintended policy consequences relating to the deferral of benefits, increased tax and ill health entitlements for teachers. So we'll obviously note that correspondence, but I think obviously we need to sort of consider the timing of the consultation and perhaps then have some correspondence brought to us from the department around that. So,
Can I just get that straight in my head? We've almost got to the point of the revision of the pension scheme. It's been fully consulted on. Is there going to be another consultation on the changeover from the current set of rules to the new set of rules? It's still the same scheme.
I understand, Chair, that that there's an existing QIA and there has been a consultation. So, hold on. Sorry, I may have misspoke there. I think actually, I think there is a further consultation. Yes, another one on this this issue of its the department indicates that it's a technical issue, that because you're going from an old scheme to a new scheme, the members of the old scheme become deferred members, and therefore they have certain rights and there are certain obligations around tax and ill health and the deferral of benefits. But that was never the policy intention. So what they want to do is kind of get round that loophole by bringing forward another statutory rule. And yes, sorry, short answer, there is another consultation.
Okay. I think I'm in the wrong game.
okay, content?
Sorry, Chair, I made a small error here. I beg your pardon, Chair, but at page 153, we have correspondence from the department on the Shared Education Signature Programme. Just the committee had asked, I think Speedwell Trust had made some comments about could schools in the same sector cooperating would be classed as shared education. The department has come back with answers about that, and that's at page 1.
Can we note that for now?
Have they said yes or no?
I think they've said in the case of Piece 4, no, but that in the case of the signature project, I think that this is all being determined. It hasn't been determined exactly what projects will be supported under that particular project, but they have set out what they are.
Okay. Content. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move into our first briefing for our inquiry into shared and integrated education. And our briefing is from the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. You have the clerk's cover note at page 242, and then the submission to the inquiry from Nikki. This session will be started, and we have our 2 witnesses. We have Patricia Loosley Mooney, who is the current Commissioner, and Dr. Alison Montgomery, the Senior Policy and Research Officer. You're
Morning.
both very welcome.
Thank you.
Can I ask you to make your opening statement, and members will follow up with some questions.
Okay. Can I first of all thank the committee for inviting us here today to give evidence to its inquiry into shared education and integrated education, and I welcome the committee's decision to initiate an inquiry into these two important aspects of education in Northern Ireland and to garner the views of the stakeholders. As many of you will be aware, the principal aim of my office is to ensure the safeguarding and promotion of the rights and best interests of children and young people. And as part of my remit, I have a mandate to keep under review the adequacy and effectiveness of law, practice and services relating to the rights and best interests of children and young people. And furthermore, my office bases all its work on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, or the UNCRC as it's broadly known. And my presentation this morning will highlight the key findings emerging from a consultation which my office undertook with children and young people to explore their views and experiences of shared education. The inquiry's terms of reference address the nature and definition of shared education, key barriers and enablers for shared education, and what priorities and actions need to be taken to improving sharing. Children and young people discussed these issues during the consultation, and I will make reference to their responses throughout this presentation. As you know, the Department of Education established a ministerial advisory group to explore and bring forward recommendations to the Minister to advance shared education in Northern Ireland, and in line with my remit, which I have just described, I offered to assist the Minister by consulting children and young people about shared education with the intention of ensuring that their views were incorporated into the Ministerial Advisory Group's report. The focus of the consultation was on shared education. However, pupils and teachers from integrated schools participated. Therefore, reference is also made to integrated education. Although the consultation was completed within a very short time frame, my office was eager to ensure that as many children and young people as possible were able to participate. So there were two strands. Firstly, workshops were conducted with primary school pupils aged between 8 and 10 and post-primary age pupils aged 14 to 17. And secondly, surveys were completed by children aged 10 to 11 years and young people aged 16. And the surveys were commissioned from ARC, a joint initiative between Queen's University Belfast and the University of Ulster, which devises the Kids and Young Life and Time surveys. 2 modules of questions relating to pupils' attitudes and experiences of shared education were included in each of the surveys. 38 workshops were conducted in 21 schools across Northern Ireland, involving more than 750 primary, post-primary and special school pupils. A key objective was to ensure that pupils from as many school types as possible were able to participate, and care was taken to ensure that the sample of schools recruited was as representative as possible. The workshops explored pupils' awareness, understanding and experiences of shared education and their views about how it should be taken forward. And I'd like to give you an overview now of the findings emerging from that consultation. Less than 50% of post-primary pupils indicated that the term shared education was familiar to them. Where they did recognise it, this was usually due to their knowledge of or participation in shared classes at GCSE or A-level. Very few primary pupils were aware of the concept, although after it was explained, some suggested it referred to activities such as joint projects or trips with other schools in which they or other pupils had been involved. This lack of awareness was not entirely unexpected, as the term may not have been widely used in schools, and a significant proportion of primary pupils indicated that they had not had any experience of shared activities. Post-primary pupils' experiences of shared education were in many cases linked to their participation in shared classes, although other shared activities were also identified, such as joint residentials, drama productions or sport events with other schools. Pupils also talked about sharing sports facilities or transport, and the potential for pupils to participate in shared activities appeared to be influenced by a number of factors, including the subjects they studied, the class or year group they were in, and their involvement in extracurricular activities. Children and young people who had taken part in shared classes or activities expressed a range of opinions with regard to their experience. Both primary and post-primary pupils welcomed the opportunity to interact and make new friends with pupils from other schools. They also enjoyed the experience of different learning approaches and gaining insights into other schools. And one post-primary pupil summarised many pupils' responses by saying, "I think it's a good way to mix with pupils from other schools and to make new friends with people who have a different background or religion to us." A clear benefit of shared classes for post-primary pupils was the expanded choice of subjects available at Key Stage 4 and A level, and one pupil commented that it gives people more subject options. It's a unique opportunity. Some pupils reported having less positive experiences. These often occurred where they had limited or negative contact with pupils from other schools. They talked about feeling uncomfortable if they were in a minority or feeling out of place when they attended classes in another school. And as one post-primary pupil said, "Joint classes are a bit awkward. We all sit at one table, but we don't really mix with the pupil from the other school." Another pupil said, "You feel like outcasts if you're going to a class and walking through the school and they look at you because you're in a different uniform." A number of logistical issues, including transport arrangements and timetabling variations between schools, also impacted on the pupils' experiences. During the consultation, children and young people were asked to think about the kind of approaches and activities which they believed would be effective in the development of shared education. And a significant majority of respondents to the Kids Life and Times and Young Life and Times surveys agreed that shared projects, classes and facilities would be a good idea. Pupils in the workshops explored this question in more detail, calling for more collaborative learning approaches to be employed and for additional subjects and activities to be included. Pupils said group work and more mixing activities would make it more enjoyable, and subjects like technology, art, PE, science and music, you could do them with other people better. Pupils also highlighted the importance of introducing shared education at an early stage in a child's schooling, of undertaking preparation in advance of shared learning activities and providing opportunities for pupils to feed back on their experiences. As well as highlighting opportunities for shared education, pupils were asked if they thought there were any barriers which might dissuade young people from taking part, and in response, some students, mostly at post-primary schools, acknowledged that they would be concerned about sharing their education with pupils from particular schools. Their concerns related to academic ability, cross-community issues, standards of behaviour and the increased potential for bullying. And to illustrate these concerns, a grammar school pupil commented on a non-selective school and said, "I don't want to sound stuck up, but they don't push you there. We get better grades." And a primary pupil admitted, "I don't like the fact that if another school joins with us, we will have bullies, and the bullies will spread when we do shared education." So, logistical issues, including travel arrangements, timetabling and different school rules, were again cited by many post-primary pupils, as well as principals and teachers, as significant barriers. A majority of pupils thought it was important for pupils from different schools and backgrounds to have an opportunity to learn together. Indeed, in a number of the workshops, pupils contended that the aim of shared education should not be restricted to bringing pupils from the two dominant religious traditions together, but instead involve pupils from all types of schools. However, pupils acknowledged concerns about shared education occurring between particular school types, and reservations were expressed by pupils at grammar schools have been mentioned. In response, some pupils attending non-selective schools felt that grammar school pupils would regard them as less able and therefore be reluctant to become learning partners. Pupils attending special schools were very keen to engage with their peers in other schools, although a few did admit to being a little nervous going somewhere new. In response, pupils from mainstream schools highlighted a number of issues which they felt needed to be considered in advance of any shared activities with pupils at special schools, including the potential for bullying, accidents, logistical difficulties and the challenge for teachers to effectively teach all pupils together. A special school teacher also welcomed the educational opportunity for pupils through their school's membership of an area learning community. And although she noted there was also resistance on the part of some mainstream schools to engage with special schools, Irish medium school pupils reflected on the challenges they would encounter through collaborative learning with English medium schools, where there would be limited opportunities for them to speak Irish. Integrated school pupils expressed a willingness to engage with pupils from all schools, suggesting that their experience and the modus operandi in integrated schools could support other schools to effectively participate in shared education. Principals and teachers' responses echoed some of the views expressed by pupils, particularly in terms of the opportunities to build relationships and the logistical issues associated with arranging shared education activities. Additional challenges included funding, promoting shared education through cross-community links, and for a minority of teachers, managing staff or parents' concerns. To conclude, I would like to briefly reflect on the findings. It was evident that shared education in most primary schools was associated with enhanced curriculum provision and the opportunity for pupils in Year 11 to 14 to participate in joint classes with other schools. In primary schools, pupils' experiences were generally through joint projects or trips with other schools. In some workshops, pupils indicated that participation in shared activities had only been available in a specific year groups. Given the commitment in the programme for government for all children to have the opportunity to participate in shared education by 2015, significant efforts will be required to expand provision across all year groups in primary, post-primary and special schools if this is to be realised. Many pupils recognise the value of shared education through the potential benefits for their learning and opportunities to develop relationships with pupils at other schools. While many recounted positive experiences, a significant minority offered less positive feedback, and some described collaborative activities and joint classes as shared but separate, because pupils remained within their own school or friendship groups and interactions with pupils from the other schools had been limited. Other young people talked about feeling uncomfortable when attending classes in another school, particularly where they were in a minority. And in taking shared education forward, it will be important that the objectives are very clearly communicated to all involved and that pupils are encouraged and supported by all stakeholders to be equal and effective collaborators. The provision of quality learning experiences must be a priority for all pupils, and appropriate mechanisms such as school councils or buddy systems should be put in place so that where pupils have concerns, these can be dealt with sensitively and appropriately. The attitudes of some post-primary pupils, particularly those who have less experience of shared education, were strongly influenced by their perceptions of other schools and pupils. Perceived differences in ability, social background and religion influenced their desire to engage in shared learning initiatives, and in some cases pupils' views had been influenced by their parents or teachers. If shared education is to be regarded as a positive learning opportunity, there is a need to confront and challenge such preconceptions. Evidently, one of the most effective ways to do this is to involve pupils in positive shared learning initiatives. However, it will also be important to consider other ways to address pupils' concerns prior to their participation. As one principal commented, it's important to make people comfortable and get them in a position to embrace challenges. The consultation highlighted a range of issues relating to specific school types, which should be considered by the Department of Education. Pupils and principals in Irish medium schools were keen that the Department consider how their schools could be included in shared education as it is taken forward. It will also be important to consider how mainstream schools can collaborate most effectively with special schools and be supported to address any attitudinal or practical issues arising. And, as already highlighted, pupils and teachers in grammar schools expressed reservations about the benefits of collaborative learning with pupils attending non-selective schools. The perspectives of pupils and staff in integrated schools were quite distinctive. While many welcome opportunities to engage in a collaborative learning with other schools, they pointed out that they were already part of an effective shared learning environment, and one principal reflected, shared education is fine as a starting point, but it needs more work. The consultation with pupils referenced the definition of shared education outlined in the terms of reference for the Ministerial Advisory Group and which is now displayed on the Department of Education's website. This definition references the need for shared education to provide for learners from all of the Section 75 categories and socio-economic status. And 2, promote equality of opportunity, good relations, equality of identity, respect for diversity and community cohesion. Findings from the consultation indicated that some shared education activities fulfilled these requirements more successfully than others. And in some cases, the main objective appeared to be supporting the provision of the entitlement framework in the post-14 curriculum and pupils' access to a wide range of courses. In others, collaboration was occurring between schools of a similar management type or ethos. And if pupils are to experience shared education as defined by the Department's clear aims and objectives, need to be outlined at the beginning of any shared initiative to which all stakeholders can subscribe. Ongoing monitoring and evaluation of activities which also involves pupils should be undertaken to ensure all objectives are being met. And lastly, the 2002 and 2008 concluding observations for the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child recorded the Committee's concern that education in Northern Ireland remained largely segregated. And in 2002 it recommended that the Government take measures to establish more integrated schools. And in 2008 it called on Government to take steps to address segregated education. In concluding, I would like to say that I welcome all the efforts to address separation in the education system in Northern Ireland and the introduction of measures which encourage greater collaboration and understanding and which promote equality and respect for diversity. If shared education is to be implemented as envisaged by the Department, this will create both opportunities and challenges for schools. Therefore, it is vital that all those involved in the delivery of shared education are effectively supported in their efforts to provide positive and meaningful shared experiences which are educationally and socially valuable for all of the pupils. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, and I'm conscious that this may be the last time that you present in your current role, and I don't wish, this isn't a criticism whenever I actually ask you about this, because I am concerned about how we consult with young people, and I know that you've carried out various consultations over your terms in office, and I really just wanted to see whether or not there are there's a formalised way in which we can maybe start to look at how we consult. And I know that you have close links with this, with the universities. I'm just wondering whether or not you have any relationships with the education and library boards and the maybe more formal routes and structures that they have.
Well, yes, we would have engaged with the education and library boards and previous chief executives that would have been on them, so we would have had conversations with them. Obviously, we have those conversations also with the Minister for Education, and one of the areas, particularly for participation, that we're very keen on is school councils and the opportunity for children to have their voice there. And certainly we would engage with the committee when you're looking at this inquiry, that you ensure that you get the voice of children in there, and that might be one mechanism by where you could gain some of that information, and in particular the views of young people. But yes, we have engaged with many bodies across the board, and particularly in my 8 years of being in post as well.
I mean, and I appreciate in this you've reached out and you've tried to get as broad a sample as possible, but at the same time you're still restricted to 21 schools, which is still quite a tiny number by comparison to what's in the school estate. So, is there an opportunity to formalise a relationship moving into with the Education Authority?
Well, I think what I'm trying to do is to get government generally to look at the issue of participation, and what we have done over the last 4 years is engage with government around participation policy statements of intent. And they've signed up to those, and we've gone back a year later and said, you've signed up to this and what have you done? We have now extended that out to the Department's arm's length bodies, so we have sent the same to the education library boards. I recently have met all but 2 of the new chief executives of the councils. We wrote out to 26 councils and 14 responded. So we think it's timely now, because we have some councils, like for instance Lisburn signed up to the statement of intent but Castlereagh didn't, so we need to ensure when they come together as a new super council that they sign up from day one. So we're trying to engage that we give some of that responsibility on to the duty bearers to ensure that they have a mechanism to engage with children and young people. So the education library boards, the health trusts, all, so there's about 29 apart from the 11 out of the 12 government departments, have signed up to the participation statements of intent. So that's kind of the ongoing work that we're kind of doing to get government and its arm's length bodies to actually think about the engagement of the participation of children and young people.
And I
Can I
think
just
that
add,
would-
just when we point, sorry to interrupt, just wanted to add, when we point that we have discussed the questions that we used and the engagement that we had with children and young people through the surveys and the workshops with the Department of Education, and they're now going to take the questions that we had used in the Kids and the Young Life and Times survey forward and to administer those every 2 years with pupils across schools to gauge, to get some sense of their engagement with shared education and their experiences of it. And yes, it was, I would agree, Chair, it was a small sample. It was really the time constraints that we had in order to contribute to the Ministerial Advisory Group's work. But the 21 schools were literally representative of every type of school in Northern Ireland, taking into account sectors, ethos, geographical location and so on. So it was a small number of schools, but it was a good number of pupils in a sense as well.
I'm not being
Yeah.
critical
No.
of the
Yeah.
fact that it
No,
is,
but we
because
were
I
aware
understand.
it was a modest sample, really.
Yeah, because I
Yes.
understand that it is a challenge in time constraints and so on, but I'm just wondering whether or not there is some other way that...
There has to
that
be
we
a better
can-
mechanism, I agree with you, and that's where we've been doing some work around participation to try to encourage organisations and obviously arm's length body and government to look at the issue of participation, to mainstream it, so that when the Department of Education or Education Library Boards are looking at their policy or legislation, that they actually include the voice of children and young people. And in the last couple of weeks, before I go out of office, I've been going around schools and events and venues where young people have been at over the 8 years. And again, I'm still hearing the same message. Our voice has not been listened to. And particularly around the issue of shared education. I spoke to young people in Enniskillen who talked about the shared campus, and they're saying, all we hear is the talk of the adults. Nobody's asked us what we think. So...
Okay. I mean, you'll be aware that the current education bill is likely to include the provision of requiring the authority to encourage, facilitate and promote shared education, and taking that as it is and moving forward, how do you think that can be assessed with regards to participation amongst schools?
Well, I think that all needs to be written into the detail of the guidelines that come out of any piece of legislation around shared education, that children and young people must be included. Again, I can only go back to the work that we're doing, say, for instance, at the minute with the Department of Environment around their guidelines and community planning and ensuring that children and young people's voice are included in that and they're specifically mentioned. So if you're looking at the legislation that will flow from this piece of work, shared education, we need to ensure that children and young people are mentioned in that and embedded, and that their voice has to be heard throughout the process and in the evaluation and monitoring of that.
Okay, and would you say that would be your key recommendation?
Very much so, yes. Participation of young people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lunn?
Oh, thanks, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. We seem to have got mixed messages. I mean, there's one thing about asking children for an opinion or questions. They just give you it straight, you know. They haven't acquired our diplomatic skills, so they just tell you what's in their minds, and I think that's brilliant. So when I see that, for instance, a grammar school pupil has said that, I don't want to be stuck up, but effectively we feel that collaborating with these secondary schools is perhaps holding us back. I wouldn't like to think that was a representative view, and this worries me about the size of the sample. I mean, can I take it that's an individual comment and not a general theme of the responses you got from grammar schools?
Maybe I can take that one. We were in 4 grammar schools, and in 3 of those grammar schools there was quite an extensive shared education set of opportunities, mostly through GCSE and A-level courses. In 3 of the schools, all of the young people talked about some of the concerns they had about engaging with non-selective schools. Only one of the grammar schools was unanimously positive about the engagement with non-selective schools. The other schools had some reservations around that. Now, the thing about the sample to say is that we were trying to collect a diversity of opinion from young people, so we really wanted to get the range of views. In some cases, the young people hadn't actually participated in shared learning opportunities, and in some cases those were also the grammar schools speaking. So there is work to be done to try and reassure pupils, that their learning will not necessarily be threatened in any way, or that it's going to be disadvantageous to them to engage in learning with other skills. But there is a strong perception out there in some of the grammar schools, which was also coming from the teachers and from the parents, where there was a concern that if their child or the pupil was engaging in taking part or taking an A-level course in a non-selective school, that perhaps they wouldn't be experiencing the same level.
And I think the important thing is that if someone has a misconception or a fear of something, it needs to be addressed. And I think that's where shared education needs to go beyond the academic strand of this. It's about understanding and respecting and listening to the voice of young people, and if they have a concern, how that can be dealt with and how those concerns then can be met, because again, some of that may be around influence from teachers or parents, but it could also be just something that they've heard somewhere and may not be reality. And it's how the school deals with that and ensures that all of the pupils that get involved in any kind of shared education are valued.
Right, because it seems to me that if you take sharing as being a process to try and improve educational outcomes, almost the best form of sharing is probably between a successful grammar school and a slightly less successful secondary school down the road. And it does worry me. I mean, what the children say is kind of instinctive. When you get it from teachers and parents of grammar schools, an attitude like that they effectively don't want to be bothered, don't think it might hold their children back, and they can't see the virtue of giving a helping hand in particular subjects or particular levels to a school which needs that help. That's that's a wee bit disappointing.
But can I also say that's assuming that their perception is right? The children that come from the non-selective school could probably just be as capable and able when they merge and they do the subject together. Again, some of this is around perception.
Yeah, absolutely. The other perception, and that's my last one, Chair, the reaction of children in integrated schools who seem to have made the point that we're perfectly happy to collaborate with other schools, but made the point that they're already actually doing it within their own school. Have you any comment about that reaction?
I think it's about looking at all of the models of good practice out there and sharing it across the board. And if integrated schools already think they're doing some of that, then sharing with other schools will help enhance the other schools.
Yes.
And indeed, some of the primary pupils said, well, we might be able to show pupils in other schools how we get on in our school. And they were actually seeing themselves as educators, in a sense.
That moves you on to the societal aspect of it. That, I'm sure an integrated school and another school in the locality could collaborate perfectly well. There's no reason why they shouldn't, but there may be an opportunity there for the other school to learn exactly that there's no boogeyman here. This is a perfectly valid way to do your education. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Thanks, and apologies for having to leave in the middle of it, and apologies if this question's already been no, it was a very, very useful insight you've given on the whole thing and from the school's point of view. Would it be helpful if we have really had a definition of what shared education is and have, say, a five-point scale to measure the level of sharing? From it seems such a range from, like, for example, with a school like St Columbanus in Bangor in here last night in the German debate, and integrated schools at one end of the spectrum, and then with the two schools that maybe have the annual visit to the pantomime. Would it be helpful if we had, for schools and for everybody, we had like a 5-point scale to measure the level of sharing?
I'm not sure if you necessarily need a 5-point scale, but I think it would be helpful to provide a more detailed definition for a start about what shared education is actually about, and that you actually open up what the aims and objectives are, very clearly outline what they are, what are the outcomes that you're looking for, how do you measure the impact, and then maybe looking, for example, to the CRED policy, and just in the sense of how it's structured. It goes into a lot of detail about what the aims and objectives are, what the values are, what the principles are, but also what you're seeking to achieve at the end, about meaningful interaction, about pupils' full participation, about involving pupils in the planning and evaluation of of shared education. So certainly there's a lot of different shared experiences, and it could be sharing resources. And there's a question there about what benefit there is to children's learning and to their social development through the sharing of resources, where they perhaps never meet pupils from the school in which they're sharing the resources, right through to pupils going on a regular basis to another school or meeting somewhere in a neutral location and engaging in a very effective and a meaningful way. So there's definitely, you could say there's a continuum, I suppose, in a sense of what shared education actually is, what it's actually achieving, and what the impact is then on the pupils. So I'm not sure about a 5-point, but you could certainly seek to define different levels of sharing, yes.
And then in terms of, you talked about the barriers, did you, it was very interesting to listen to the views of people and so on. Did you find the geography of the whole thing, particularly in rural areas, a major barrier to sharing?
Yeah, and some of those were down to maybe the cost of transport or the distance between schools or different kinds of issues. So I think it's not about one cap fits all either, but it's how you can be flexible within that kind of number of schools to be able to be inclusive, and for them to be able to say, here's the best way of us doing that. And sometimes part of that will be the funding that the school might need in order to be able to partake in some of those activities.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr Newton.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank the Commissioner and Ms Montgomery for coming along today. I'd just ask 2 questions. I think you've partially answered my first one in relation to Mr Lund's question. I mean, is the general perception that shared education is a threat or an opportunity? And addressing some of Mr Lund's remarks, he concentrated on the academic aspect of the grammar schools, but in a wider context, is it perceived as a threat or an opportunity? And maybe just to give you the 2 questions, in page 70 of your report under the area-based planning, you made reference to many pupils and teachers were concerned about the potential implications of area-based planning proposals. Maybe could you expand on that just a bit, and what those concerns were and what they perhaps seen as, presumably they saw that as a negative impact, or maybe they saw it as a positive impact?
Okay, I'll maybe respond to your second question first. Yes, as part of the consultation, we did ask pupils about their views of area-based planning, what they knew about it, what they understood, and what they saw as opportunities and also possible, I suppose, threats. So, in a sense, younger pupils were concerned perhaps about getting together with pupils from other schools who they didn't know, about their school becoming too big, about it affecting the teaching and learning provision within the school, about bullying came up a lot amongst primary pupils, and there were concerns that maybe you'd be meeting pupils from other schools or having to be educated with pupils from other schools who were nasty or unkind or who didn't want to play. So at that level there were concerns about what that would mean in terms of different groups of pupils, I suppose, within the school. There was also concerns about having to travel if you had to go to another school, if your school amalgamated with another, change of uniform, and issues like that. I suppose amongst principals and teachers were also consulted during the consultation as well, and concerns that the approach to area-based planning wasn't really taking into consideration an open approach. It wasn't adopting an open approach. It was really thinking about making changes within the existing network. So it wasn't a blue sky type of thinking, but that the changes were occurring within sectors, so that there was a restructuring potentially within the maintained sector or within the controlled sector and so on. But pupils' concerns really were about what it would mean for them in their schools if they were to amalgamate with another school, and in terms of how it would affect their friendship circles, their learning, bullying, that kind of issue that I've mentioned. So that was really the key issues there. Do you want to take the other question?
Which one is that?
Yeah, about opportunities. I would say overall, overall I would have said about 60%, 60 to 65% of pupils were very positive, about shared education, about the opportunities that it created, whether that was academic opportunities or social opportunities. but there was a significant minority who were also raising concerns. So even pupils who were saying, well, it was great to be able to meet pupils from other schools, it's expanded my friendship circle, they were saying, but I don't like having, the fact I'm in a minority in another school when I go there to, to participate in classes, I find that a bit difficult. So it was difficult at times to quantify their responses because they often said, something very positive and then reflected on it and said, but this aspect isn't so great. And that's why it was difficult to say, it was clearly this percentage was wholly positive and this percentage was wholly negative. Most pupils were very positive. They saw the opportunities, but they also recognised the challenges in it, if that's a way
And I
of
think that's the
summarising
important part. It's how you manage those challenges and what needs to be put in order for particularly the concerns of young people to be addressed.
One primary pupils I remember him saying, it's a good idea, but you have to be careful how you go about it. And that was how he summarised it. I thought that was
Very wise.
we almost called the report
Could be a
that.
politician.
Be careful
Whoever
how you
said
go
that
about
so
it.
far.
We'll end up here.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms McLaughlin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you both. Just going back to the issue of the definition, and I suppose, I'm listening carefully to what you're saying in relation to sort of almost levels of definition and tiers of definition of shared education. But if your organisation, Commissioner, had a magic wand in relation to priority of definition, would it be about sharing resources, or in terms of respect and tolerance and mutual understanding, or sharing resources? Where would the priority be?
I think there are a number of issues, and I think first of all for me, and after the research was done, and Alison was obviously much more involved in that than I was because she was going out to speak to the children. I think the fact is that young people see the benefit of this and the positive opportunity, but I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around the understanding and respect and diversity that come from all different types of schools, and I think that has to be underpinning whatever legislation comes out of this, that we ensure that young people feel comfortable when they go there, that it's actually working for them and it's making a difference, and that they have a contribution to make and they feel equal to all of the people who are involved in the shared education project.
But it's, and I'm just being a bit, Chair, of a devil's advocate in this one, but if it is ultimately about the work on understanding and I'm assuming good relations and
Yes.
tolerance, does that mean that educational outcomes are secondary to that?
I don't think they're secondary. I think they can run alongside that. I mean, the issue here is that this is in an education environment, and obviously education is important and the outcomes for that. But what you're asking here is for shared spaces and shared places, and we need to ensure that if young people are going to go in to be educated in those shared spaces and places, that there's a mutual understanding and respect of each other, and that they feel equal when they're going into those places to be educated.
Okay. So I suppose, given, what I picked up from your presentation was, yes, the variety in terms of definition of shared, but more clarity in relation to integrated.
Yes.
Do you envisage then that integrated is the logical conclusion of a shared education process?
No, I
Of
think
where it ultimately ends up?
integrated education is part of the process, and it's part of education in the widest sense, and we would support that. But what we're saying is that whatever process comes out of this, it has to be embedded in equality and a strong ethos around education, and very strong aims and objectives on how this needs to be delivered. And for me, as I said from the very beginning, the voice of young people in that, on how they see it's working for them and where the barriers are.
Okay, and finally, Chair, if I may, in terms of shared education processes, and again, because of your very clear call for definition, but the variety of views on it, what evidence have we that shared education processes will provide or produce more socially and economically viable and even religiously diverse schools?
But I think that's why you need to start the process, to see how you can engage with the schools, with the teachers and with the children in order to get to a better place. And I'm always worried that when you start something, we make it too rigid, because there will be different flexibilities from urban to rural to other places that will need that flexibility to be able to deliver that. But if you have the same goal or want to achieve the same outcome, then sometimes it will take some areas longer to get there than it will others. But I think it's important that at least the journey is begun.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr McCausland.
Yeah, thank you. I was interested in your use of the word there about equality, and on page 6 of the report, there's a very good point made there. Pupils are encouraged and supported by all stakeholders to be equal and effective collaborators. That's stated there as being something that's hugely important. And in that context then, I was looking at, as your work's obviously based on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, mentions made there specifically of Article 29. And if I could pick out D there, the preparation of the child for responsible life in a free society in the spirit of understanding and so on. Sorry, wrong one. C it is. The development of respect for the child's parents, his or her own cultural identity, language and values, for the national values of the country in which the child is living, country from which he or she may originate, and for civilisations different from his or her own. So it's got built in there the concept of about social cohesion, but also cultural diversity. Yeah. In that context, if you're thinking about children coming together from different school backgrounds and them having to, if this is going to work with shared education, that they have to be able to come together on a basis of equal and effective collaborators. You don't want to get into that position. I remember Pierre Trudeau saying about Canada's relationship with America was like being in bed with an elephant. And you want a situation where children are coming together on that basis of equality if it's going to work, and we want it to work. So, was there anything to suggest that with schools in different sectors, and even within a particular sector, having different approaches to cultural traditions, that children coming together may not be coming together on the basis of equal collaborators, because one may have a much different view from their school? Children will come with a cultural tradition from the home, but if the school doesn't affirm it, it's simply what's left at the home. But some schools do affirm much more than others. And there's also paragraph 31(2), where it says in that context that state parties shall respect and promote the right of the child to participate fully in cultural life and encourage the provision of appropriate and equal opportunities for cultural activity. There's no onus on different sectors to provide equally for cultural traditions. How do you see that? Did that arise as an issue? Maybe it's something that the children aren't aware of. Maybe it's something they're not going to express it in those terms. But is it something that they're conscious of, that there may be a fear of, well, they know more than I do, or they do more, or whatever?
I'll let Alison come in, as I said, because she was more involved in the actual. But I think the important part is that there's an understanding, and maybe this is where sometimes there needs to be that single identity work done in a school first before you bring two schools together. So from that perspective, and it's understanding, but it's about when you bring children or young people together, that they have an understanding and a respect for the others' difference or diversity or culture or whatever it is, so that it's not going in with these kind of preconceptions of some of the issues that were raised in the findings. So, if a young person either feels that their voice isn't being heard, then that needs to be addressed, or that someone else finds it difficult or uncomfortable, then that needs to be addressed as well. So,
in answer to your question, yes, the issue is touched upon more so in post-primary schools. So it was around an awareness. First of all, was there an awareness on the part of some pupils that they were actually engaging with pupils from another cultural tradition? And in some cases, they would say we got together with the school down the road, but they didn't actually seem to be aware that the children were coming from a different cultural background or religious background to them. So there was in some cases, there wasn't actually even awareness that the other children were different. The other issue in and around concerns, yes, some pupils did identify potential for there to be difficulties in engaging with children from other cultural backgrounds. Sometimes this was in advance of having engaged in shared education opportunities and saying, well, that might be an issue, it might be a difficulty. But other pupils were very open and said, you know, something along the lines of, look, we can't tiptoe around, was a quote actually from one pupil, said, we can't tiptoe around this issue. We need to engage with pupils from different backgrounds, including those from different cultural backgrounds, and we need to talk about the issues that have been difficult for so many years. I suppose you mentioned equality as well. I think that comes up in terms of small numbers of pupils going to another school, you know, to take part in shared classes, and certainly in a number of occasions we were finding there was maybe only 1 or 2 pupils from one school going to another, and they found that quite difficult, you know, where they really were in a minority.
But it would also, would it not apply in the context of the experience, education, understanding of their cultural identity? I mean, if, say, you go to an Irish medium school, there is a cultural ethos there of Irishness, and that's taught, and it permeates all that the school does, because that's the purpose of the school. Another school may tread very lightly around cultural traditions. So I just wonder there.
There's probably an issue around support for teachers, exactly, you know, in advance of engaging then in some of this work, and we did say this very clearly in the report that a lot of experience, expertise, and knowledge has been built up through work done through the CRED policy and taking that forward, and we find a lot of teachers in schools, and particularly in primary schools, felt that they had developed, you know, a lot of understanding around this kind of work, both single identity and work with other schools. So there's a lot of expertise out there amongst teachers, and it's about sharing that. It's about finding ways of utilising that, and also within integrated schools where pupils and teachers, have experience, obviously, of dealing with controversial issues on a daily basis. And it's about, I think, harnessing some of that expertise, that knowledge, and sharing that as shared education goes forward. So there is work to be done.
Just very quickly, two very brief points. On 31.2 there, have you, as a Commission, ever looked at that issue of the equality of cultural provision within different education sectors, as to whether that 31.2 is actually, in terms of reporting and monitoring the implementation of the Charter, has that ever been looked at?
I suppose we look at it in educational contexts. You know, we would certainly take it into account considering the provision of education, whether that's looking at special educational needs, whether it's looking at
but that's very specific there. It says equal opportunities for cultural activity. You know, we're not talking here about whether children have their, you know, access to teaching about
Well, it's never
on
been something that has been raised with me as a Commissioner, that a child feels it's been denied its right to learn about its culture or in school in particular. So it's not an issue that would have been
the child is not going to raise it maybe if they don't know that they have a right. That's just in that context. How would you know, can you report on the thing, or what is the current cycle with UNCRC reporting?
It's supposed to be every 5 years. The last time we reported was in 2008, and the committee is behind in delivering some of that. So it looks like as if the next report won't be until 2016. Although the UK government, who is the state party that has to report, has already progressed their report and has been handed into the committee.
And what consultation was there with in Northern Ireland in that regard?
Well, you would have to. OFM, DFM are responsible for their input.
You're not aware of that, no? Okay.
Well, I'm aware of it, but we didn't. We had conversations, but we didn't actually see their.
Okay.
And the problem is, it goes into a UK report, so very often it's more English centric when it goes to the committee, and we've had this issue. The 4 commissioners across the UK put in their own report, and we raised specific issues with regard to our own jurisdictions within that report. Now, we haven't compiled ours yet because we haven't had a date of when we need to have that ready for. We're hearing it's around 2016, so it should have been in 2013, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Overend.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, can I just say we can share those with you? We would
That'd be
have
useful.
copies
Thank
of
you.
the. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, thank you. We've had an interesting discussion about the definition of shared education, and I will not need to go across that again, but just to, you mentioned at the beginning about some primary age pupils were not even aware of the term shared education, and I don't really think that's any bad thing as long as they get on with it.
No.
And then I suppose as they get older, then they understand the academic benefits of shared education, and if they've clear goals in what they're doing, then there are benefits in the other aspects of their education and in their identity. And just to lead the conversation on then, schools should be supported, or you said that schools should be supported in pursuing shared education. Do you think that should be via an external facilitator, or maybe you could tell us more about what your thoughts are and how the schools should be supported in pursuing further shared education?
I think the first thing was that, just to go back to your first point that you made, was that this was a ministerial advisory group that was set up to look at shared education, and so it was shared education we were using as the term when we spoke to children. What we found was when we explained to them what the term shared education meant, then they seen themselves having taken part in that kind of shared education experience, which I think was important. I think what we're saying is that whatever comes out of this debate in shared education, that there obviously is, and even through some of the advice that we're given here today, is that there is a need for support for schools and for teachers as well. Now, that would be up to the department when it decides how this education or this shared education project should be rolled out, at what kind of support those parents or teachers should have from that perspective of whether that's external or whether it's something the department itself will, through its own training units or whatever, do.
I'm just trying to ask you how do you feel it should be? You know, what's your opinion on how would be the best
A lot of
way?
expertise in the sector. I think there's definitely a lot of expertise in the sector, and a lot of the schools we work in, they already had developed, you know, very effective links with other schools, whether that was through area learning communities, for example, or whether it was through taking forward education, mutual understanding, PDMU, citizenship, CRED, and so on. So there's a lot of expertise out there already. The youth sector also has a lot of expertise and knowledge in terms of bringing, you know, young people together and maybe doing more less formal types of learning activities, which would be very helpful, I think, in preparing young people, you know, before they go out to even engage in shared education initiatives with other schools. So I think we would say look to teachers as they are there already, as they already have developed knowledge and understanding, initial teacher education as well, ongoing CPD. There could be opportunities there as well to support teachers in taking this forward. So I would say look to the experts, as it were, as they are already carrying out their work and already teaching.
I'm just aware that, you know, certain types of schools might be more willing to pursue shared education while others wouldn't, and you would need an external facilitator to actually help those that are less willing to pursue and give them further guidance or support in that way. So
certainly we wouldn't rule that out. I don't think we're ruling out you know, the employment of external facilitators if that helps to give, you know, schools more confidence or something like that to engage. But our feeling is there's a lot.
I think the important thing is that all schools buy into this, and some schools will need more support than others. That's why I'm going back to that issue of flexibility. It's not about one cap fits all, and it's how that then they're supported in how they do that. And there is models of good practice already out there, and some schools may share that. Others may decide they want to go another avenue, and they may need support in other ways. And I think that's important that there's that flexibility.
yeah, I mean, it is such a, as has been said before, it's such a wide definition, and people are at different stages of shared education, and every stage is good, you know. But thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. No one else has indicated, so can I thank you very much for your time
you.
this morning and for your presentation. And can I wish you well, Patricia, on whatever lies ahead.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Education and diversity.
Googled it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, I think it would be useful. I think the issue around how we survey young people and get their participation is something that we maybe want to explore a wee bit further. So it might be useful just to contact the department. Obviously, Nikki have made representation in the past, but it might be useful just to get some more information around that and maybe look towards maybe a more formalised structure around how we engage and get feedback. Because this isn't the only piece of work that we will be doing. We will require that, and I think it's useful to have that in place. But if members are content, we do that.
Also, Chair, sorry, the clerk misspoke earlier. I've actually emailed you all already. Just in terms of shared education, piece 4, terms of reference for that are not determined yet. That's out to consultation. But the Delivering Social Change signature project on shared education very definitely requires children from different community backgrounds to be involved. So I'd misled members about half an hour earlier and suggested it the other way around. So Delivering Social Change, kids must be from different community backgrounds. Piece 4, not actually decided yet because that's out to consultation. I anticipate it'll be the same. But yeah, sorry, Chair. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. Okay. We move on then to our next briefing, which is from Parenting NI. The clerk's cover note is at page 350, and you'll see then the relevant papers then after that. We're going to welcome witnesses. We have Claire Ann McGee, who's the Director for Parenting Forum, Parenting NI, and Nicola McKeown, who is Participation Worker for Parenting Forum, Parenting NI. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, and you were in the gallery, so you were able to maybe anticipate some of the questions.
I don't know whether that was helpful for us.
More nerve-wracking. You might be able to anticipate some of the questions which will be coming along. But if you'd like to make your opening statement, and then we'll follow up with some questions.
Okay, first of all, can I thank you for having us here today. Parenting and I are very honoured to have been working with parents for the last 35 years, and 15 years of that we've been consulting with parents on a wide range of issues. As the Chair had already indicated, my name is Claire Ann McGee. I'm the Director of the Parenting Forum. For the last 17 years I've been working with parents, children and young people in the voluntary community sector. My colleague Nicola McKeown is a participation worker but is a former primary school teacher and also a former cross-community facilitator at Cormila, so she had quite a lot of experience in the issues of shared and integrated education. We're here today to present on 2 reports, 2 consultations that we've carried out with parents on the issues of shared and integrated education. The first consultation was carried out with focus groups in 2012 on behalf of the Ministerial Advisory Group, as Ms Lucy Mooney already referred to earlier. It focused specifically on shared education. The second is one that we carried out very recently in September, October of this year, and it was an online consultation that we carried out with a wide range of parents. To give you a bit of background on Parenting NI and our forum work, we're the lead voluntary organisation providing support to parents across Northern Ireland on a wide range of parenting issues. Our 4 key areas of work include the helpline, our parenting programmes, parents counselling service and our forum. And the work of the forum itself is to work with parents to improve outcomes for children and young people and aims to influence policy and practice on parenting issues. We provide consultation with parents and have done for the last 15 years, and we have over 1,800 individual parents and family support organisations as members of our forum right across Northern Ireland. In October 2012, we were commissioned to carry out consultations with parents on behalf of the QUB Ministerial Advisory Group on Shared Education. We worked with 6 focus groups of parents across Northern Ireland made up of around 55 parents. These included groups of parents representing the views of primary school, post-primary, early years settings and alternative education programmes. The purpose of this consultation was to provide a platform for parents to air their views on shared education and how best to move forward based on the questions provided by the Ministerial Advisory Group. Some general points on this consultation. Most parents said their children had had experience of shared education through, for example, extended or after schools programmes, sports teams, school twinning and joint classes for studying some subjects. But a lot of parents didn't actually know what shared education was until other parents in the room started to discuss it and had examples of it. They did, however, feel that shared education was a positive experience and had great benefits for their children. The majority of parents we spoke to in this consultation were in favour of advancing shared education in any way, shape or form. I just want to point out a little proviso with this consultation. Some parents did feel, and it was raised in a lot of the focus groups, that this consultation was somewhat disguised as a discussion on shared education when they felt it was actually more of a discussion on Northern Ireland's education system in general and an attempt to move away from grammar schools towards a comprehensive type school system providing all ability education in one setting. One group of parents felt this so strongly that they actually withdrew from the consultation process before we begun, feeling that it was an attack on grammar schools. So just to give you an idea that parents, when it comes to the likes of the education system, they had a lot of viewpoints, and some of the focus groups did go off on tangents here and there, and we had to pull them back quite a bit. But for those who did take part, some important feedback was gained. Based on this inquiry's terms of reference, I've pulled out some of the following points from the 2012 report. In relation to definition, parents initially expressed confusion about the term, stating that shared education was a bit more confused with integrated education, and as I said, it only became clear when examples started to be given of what that actually was. Shared education within this consultation focused a lot on mixing not just on a religious basis, but on mixed abilities and gender as well. This highlighted the need in this report, certainly, for a definition to be a bit clearer. Some of the key barriers to advancing shared education as raised by parents in this report were around the location of schools. One parent commented that having a joint shared education programme with another school which was in the middle of a one-sided housing estate, as they put it, wasn't always a welcoming environment for young children particularly. They also discussed the geographical spread of schools, particularly in rural areas, as a major barrier, making transport quite difficult. This also increased the costs and increased on travel time, which then impacted on timetabling for shared classes. Parents also felt that general attitudes within Northern Irish society to cross-community work and this them and us mentality needed to be addressed in order to advance shared education. They felt that there was fear amongst some schools, some parents and some communities, and therefore shared education couldn't be reinforced outside of the school environment, which is actually what is needed. Parents also felt that shared education won't meet the needs of all children. For example, in one particular group we had a few parents who had children with complex disabilities, and they felt that their physical and emotional needs had to supersede anything else. Parents did identify some alternative approaches, ranging from good practice initiatives, from short-term project focus initiatives with school twinning, to cluster group exercises amongst 3 or more schools in a particular area, which they felt was very beneficial. Some of those cluster group exercises focused particularly on working with parents and involving parents in those processes of shared education and informing parents about the messages of what shared education was actually trying to achieve and how they could help at home. The priorities and actions to improve sharing in education, parents identified as an early intervention approach that's needed to start from a very early years, needed to start from nursery level. They needed shared education to have a clear definition and purpose. They wanted more opportunities for participation, including participation of parents in this. They wanted to address the issues of symbols and religion rather than ignoring it, because they felt that if it took place in a safe space with trained facilitators, it could be discussed more openly and people would have a better understanding of it. Some parents did look at the need for changing the correct parts of the curriculum and hoping that the curriculum could focus more on citizenship, social education, respect and difference. There was a very mixed response, and again my colleague will talk a little bit about the 2014 survey that we carried out. There was a mixed response about where religious education fitted in this and whether to change to a world religion or to remove religious education in schools altogether. They also discussed that on certain subjects like history, they should be able to be encouraged that their children are being taught from both sides of the story. Parents identified another priority in action was to increase funding and to monitor to improve accountability, so that if schools are being paid money to participate in shared education initiatives, that they are quality education initiatives and actually making a real difference. They wanted to raise awareness of shared education and promoting skills with teachers and with parents, and again to encourage parental participation at all levels in order to reinforce the key messages. I'll hand over to Nicola, who will discuss a little bit about the 2014 report that we completed.
So in response to the consultation carried out in 2012, the Parenting Forum wanted to gain a more up-to-date information and views from parents in relation to the issues of shared and especially integrated education. Our experience has been that parents welcomed their input on these issues. We decided to go with an online survey using a consultation tool, using questions based on the committee's terms of reference. This survey has an advantage of gaining a wider response from parents across Northern Ireland in a very short period of time. We had a very quick turnaround. The survey was initiated towards the end of September and closed 2 weeks later in early October. Publicity to promote the survey was generated via our Parenting NI social media networks such as Facebook and Twitter, as well as through our professional networks, for example, the Education and Library Boards, our Parenting Forum database, which Claire Ann has already mentioned, has over 1,800 members of individual parents and organisations, as well as sending it out through newsletters and our Parenting Forum e-brief. So it's distributed far and wide across Northern Ireland. In total, 1,297 parents viewed the survey. 502 parents completed some of the questions, but not all, and 209 parents completed all of our questions. So some of the key findings that we gleaned from the survey. In response to the committee's the nature and definition of shared and integrated education, parents' responses varied again, as in the 2012. Still, some parents had not heard or were not familiar with the term shared education, and some even commenting, a small minority commented that they didn't know there was a difference between shared and integrated education. But the majority of parents responding said that their understanding of shared education was about bringing pupils from Catholic and Protestant schools together to share in resources, to share classes and to share facilities, with some mentioning that it should be more than just sharing from Protestant and Catholic schools, but it could be twinned from 2 Protestant schools together. However, parents responded that they seemed to have a clearer understanding that integrated education meant one school roof where pupils from all religious backgrounds were educated together, and the words tolerance and respect of differences were being promoted and taught. We asked parents, just out of interest, those who had completed the survey, how many of them had children or a child currently attending an integrated school or preschool, and 65% of respondents said yes, they did. We then went on to ask, would parents consider sending their child to an integrated school? And again, 61% of the parents responding said yes, they would. In response to key barriers to shared education, parents identified that sharing classes does not necessarily mean that pupils are mixing together or building relationship. Parents commented that this needs to be nurtured by staff, but also realise that parents need to be involved in that as well. It's one thing parents presenting their views to children and then them coming to school to be told something else. Some parents thought that shared education is a diversion from schools being fully integrated, that it was part of the process towards full integration, which many of the parents would actually prefer. And again, practical arrangements of timetabling and transport to other schools could become problematic, along with the size of classes and the appropriate facilities. Parents also mentioned that a barrier could be that differences, for some, they wanted differences to be talked about. For some parents, they thought that differences being highlighted was not always a good thing if it wasn't handled or managed by staff appropriately. Parents identified the following as key barriers to integrated education: that currently there are a limited number of pupil places available, and that the geography of current integrated schools was not always close, especially maybe to those parents who live rurally. For some parents, there was a perception that academic standards can be lower or are lower in an integrated school due to accepting pupils of all abilities rather than the higher academic standards in grammar school. There seems to be that misconception across the viewpoint of parents in Northern Ireland. However, parents responded that these enablers to shared education that sharing education is a step in the right direction to living a shared future in Northern Ireland. It encourages communities to work together, so they wanted all stakeholders from community groups, community representatives, parents to be involved in education, in teaching children, and also for communities to learn to respect and learn from one another. They also liked the fact that in shared education that the individual school ethos and identity that they had chosen for their child was still being retained and wasn't merged into an integrated status where there was one ethos. Key enablers parents identified to integrated education included children being integrated from an early age, which is how parents see Northern Ireland's working its way forward, because barriers then, or perceived barriers, are broken down much earlier, reducing the fear of the perceived other, which can sometimes happen. Parents mentioned that integrated schools are inclusive of children from all traditions and backgrounds. And the majority of parents highlighted the building of relationships in a shared society and learning about other cultures as being very positive. 60% of parents responding to the survey had said that their child had taken part in cross-community programmes, either in their school or in their local community, but 19% of parents said that they were not aware of what their children had participated in. Some examples of good practice range from taking part in sporting activities to cultural events organised by local councils. Parents said that they were not always involved in these programmes, but that they would like to be involved, and that there was no consistency of information given out by schools about what was happening. Moving forward, parents considered the following as priorities and actions that would improve sharing and integration. That parental involvement is highlighted as being important for parents to be included in some of the shared programmes where appropriate, and for more information to be made available to them via schools. Also, parents want to be better informed to make better choices for their children, and they want to be engaged on these issues of what is happening in Northern Ireland on shared and integrated education. Again, some parents said that religious education or religious background should not be the central issue to sharing education, but that actually providing good quality education for all pupils is the key to moving forward. There was also a need from parents that shared education needs to be defined as to its purpose and its benefits. Parents also thought that more agreement and more teaching and more learning for pupils on cultural identity and an agreement on flags and emblems, whether these are to be removed in schools, or some parents saw that as an opportunity to open up discussion which would help improve relationships. They also wanted more teaching on respect and tolerance and how that could be promoted. More places being available in integrated schools and better use of funding, whether that's in shared education or integrated education. And finally, parents also said that they would like to see an agreement and commitment from the Northern Ireland Assembly to integrating or sharing schools by a certain date.
Okay. Both reports in 2012 and 2014 don't claim to be reflective of the views of all parents in Northern Ireland. They are just there as a snapshot of some of the views that we've collected. As Nicola said, some of the grey areas are still around the definition, and what parents have quite clearly said in both consultations was around the importance for parents to be involved in this process. the fact that in the recent consultation that Nicola carried out, 19% of parents weren't sure if their children had actually been involved in shared education initiatives is astounding to me. Where's the communication with the school there? So that's something that parents really wanted to have us promote. The parents appreciated being involved in both these consultations, and they're very keen to hear any feedback this inquiry will be able to provide on shared and integrated education moving forward. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come today.
Okay, thank you very much. And I suppose really, I mean, you have covered the concerns which I had when I look at the limited number of respondents that you did have, and how it's very much weighted even towards integrated, because obviously they have an experience of sharing in the format within which they work. And it has come across very clearly that there is an issue around definition. When you would normally carry out this type of engagement with parents, would you find that there would be a barrier for you around certain topics, or is it usually quite straightforward to have a conversation with parents, or is education a particularly difficult one?
We find it quite easy to approach any subject with parents. I suppose the difference and the issue is around what the issue actually is, how sensitive the issue is, and whether or not we use a group of parents that we have worked with in the past, or their existing group of parents. So if they're a parents group attached to a school, for example, that we know they've got relationships there and they've got support there, once we've gone and stepped out of the room, that there is actually somebody there supporting that. Whereas if it's a particularly sensitive issue, do we just open it up to general parents? It makes it quite difficult for us to follow up the support and to ensure that parents have been supported through the whole process of it. We haven't discovered too many issues with getting parents involved in discussions around education. They're actually really keen to get involved in discussions in education. We're actually working with some voluntary and community groups at the moment, as well as representatives from education and library boards and the Education and Training Inspectorate, to look at how parental participation in schools and in education in general can be moved forward, because really we want, and parents want, to be involved in their children's education. We know that education doesn't stop at the school gates. Parents want to have those messages reinforced, but there is a lack of communication between schools and parents. So we are trying to encourage and trying to work with the departments on how, and the education library boards, on how we can push that forward.
Okay, so there really isn't a clear mechanism for you to have outreach to parents?
We have our membership forum. Say we've over 1,800 individual members and organisations attached to that. We have a lot of, depends I suppose on the issue as well. We can call on parents from our forum to come and participate in consultations. The online exercise is something we've only recently started to explore, and we've actually found that we're getting contact with more parents through the online surveys. And for example, that recent consultation, we were able to find out that parents are actually on their laptops or on their smartphones at 9 o'clock at night filling out these questionnaires because they're interested in doing it. You know, I wouldn't necessarily be interested in sitting at home at night at 9 o'clock on my smartphone answering a questionnaire, but parents feel so passionate about the subject of education that they want to do that, they want to contribute to that. So we have a broad range of methods of encouraging parents to participate and to consult on, whether it be a focus group method or an online consultation. Sometimes we work through other community and voluntary organisations who are better placed to carry out those particular consultations. We would just bring a facilitator in, and they've got a ready-made group of parents, say for example parents with children who have disabilities. We would have connections to different community and voluntary groups who work with those parents, and we can come in and support the consultation delivery with their group.
You commented there were parents who exited the process because they felt that there was possible, it was leading to perhaps the erosion of grammar schools and so on, and then there were those who actually did participate who felt that this was a diversion away from integrated. I mean, clearly, if we have an obvious definition of what sharing is, that perhaps that might then break that down, and try to dispel some of those concerns. But coming out of the work which you have done, is there a recommendation that you could bring to the committee as to how that we can better engage with parents moving forward?
I think what Claire Ann said about schools being better engaged, we have some very good practice of schools engaging very clearly with parents, involving them in parents are very positive on the whole about shared education, whether that is integrated or sharing activities. No one said that they did not want their child to participate, although I'm sure there are. If we had asked every single parent in Northern Ireland, you would maybe get a broader range of views. But information from schools, I think, is key to that. So where parents are involved in schools and where schools are building relationships with parents, there are some schools who are very good at that and inviting parents along to showcase events or being part of those shared education programmes. But there are still some schools who are not engaging with parents and are not making that information available. And parents are saying they want to be involved. They want to know. No one is saying they have an objection to that, but if schools are their first port of call, that's how they want to find out about what's going on. They don't have time to sit down maybe or are interested in looking at the Northern Ireland Assembly website or other ways, but certainly through school to me seems to be the key to where you will get all parents.
Well, one thing that we have been working on, as I said, we are trying to work on promoting parental engagement in education in a wide variety of ways. But one thing that we've looked into quite a lot is around parent councils in schools. And I know Miss Lucy Mooney had talked about school councils with children from each age group, which is fantastic. But again, it's trying to acknowledge that parents are actually involved in their children's education. They are the primary educators of their children from the children are born. So it's trying to get parents involved in the education system as well. And one of the ways that we've looked at, and we've researched quite a lot on that, is around the development of parent councils for schools. We have recently signed up to the European Parents Association, and one of their key, in fact their only key issue is to look at engaging parents in their children's education. So we're just starting that process of exploring how best parents can do that and how best schools can do that as well.
Though, and I think that's something which is useful and should be explored. But I mean, there are difficulties in getting parents involved in PTAs. Mm-hmm. I know of schools that are finding it very difficult to get parent reps onto their boards of governors. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's laudable, and I think it would be useful to have. But I think there is a challenge there, and we need to look at what the barriers are for parents and participation.
And we have looked at other models. We have been working with the Parents' Council in Dublin, and they have had no problems getting a great number of parents on board. Again, it's the relationships that are built within schools. We do understand that parents are very busy people and they don't always have time, but you will always get, as a former teacher, I used to get very frustrated that I would send notes home in school bags and they would still be there a week later. And we would talk a lot about in schools, parents are just not interested. They're not, those hard to reach parents. It's how schools engage with those parents and how the relationships. There are no parents who are hard to reach. They may be disinterested, but it's then again, it's about schools, I think, seeing themselves as being part of the community and not just it's them and us.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McCausland?
Yeah, thank you. Just picking up on the Chair's point there, I was just trying to understand maybe what the reasons would be that when the survey was done there, you had 2/3 of the parents had children attending an integrated school, whereas it would obviously that's not reflective of the wider community. Why do you think it was that you got such an unrepresentative, if we use that word, response?
It's interesting because we didn't target parents who had children with integrated and children involved in integrated education. We put it through all of our community and voluntary group networks. All of the parents that we knew of in our database, schools, a wide variety of schools were contacted, and they passed it on to their parents. It's obviously, it seems to be quite an emotive issue for parents who are currently involved in integrated or shared education initiatives, and that's why they felt so passionate to get involved in it. It's not a true reflection of the numbers in integrated education in Northern Ireland, certainly not. But there's obviously something there, there's obviously some passion that's been ignited there, and parents do feel very strongly about that for those parents who do have children involved in that sector.
The 2 points that struck me then were, the issues that they raised are perfectly legitimate issues, and they're issues that other people may well raise. Their conclusions may be different, but the issues will probably be the same. But I just trying to get some understanding. How many people would have been reached potentially by the survey?
Well, it's hard to capture that, I suppose, because we did it mainly through social media and our forum. We can guarantee that 1,800 individual parents and family organisations got it through our forum. With regards to social media, the reach could have been anything up to about 10,000. but we wouldn't have exact figures on
And
that.
yet, the number that actually responded
Yeah.
was hugely influenced by or representative of the integrated sector. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your insight. I suppose in terms of the definition of shared education, do you believe there should be a stronger emphasis on the whole idea of promoting good relations, of tolerance and respect, mutual understanding?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think parents would certainly like to see the definition, with a clear definition with a purpose and set outcomes and targets and milestones to achieve those. I suppose it comes down to the quality of shared education. What we actually mean by shared education is a joint trip to the cinema. Actually, a good quality project? No, it's probably not actually, because it is about building relationships and developing that tolerance and respecting that difference and trying to actually move things forward a little bit. So I suppose from a parent's point of view, to have a definition that says, look, this is what shared education is, this is what the initiative your child is involved in, this is how you can help promote the messages we're trying to get. That's what parents are looking for.
And I think parents just want to be informed about what's going on instead of a note. You know, I have seen, and parents have commented, a note goes home in the school bag, your school is joining up with the school down the road for a trip next week. That's not cutting it for parents anymore. They want to know, well, why? Just the same as pupils want to know, why are we joining with that school? Parents are interested. They're not against it, largely, but they want to know what's going on and what is the purpose behind and what are the benefits to sharing in education.
You also mentioned there about we need to have more schools involved in real sharing of education. Do you believe a shared education premium would be a help in facilitating that?
With regards to sort of a funding?
In terms of their funding? Right.
Parents did say that, certainly in the 2012 report, that they would prefer there was some sort of accountability and maybe closer monitoring of schools who were receiving funding for shared education initiatives, because again, some schools were taking it just as the joint trip and other schools were doing a lot more work on it. But they didn't comment specifically. They weren't asked specifically on a question like that, so I couldn't give an honest.
And it's the same in the 2014, you know, parents commented exactly the same as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hazard.
Thanks very much, Chair, and apologies I missed the very start of your presentation, but I just want to know a couple of things. Did you provide a definition of shared and integrated education to the adults who were filling in the survey?
We toyed with the idea of providing. There was a lot of discussion around, is there a definition? Could we find a definition? And once we discussed it, we decided actually for the benefit of this, let's not go with any definition because we weren't clear ourselves where that definition was coming from. So we didn't want to spoil. Sometimes providing things to parents can then spoil the results by giving them ideas. So we wanted them just to come up with what did they understand by those terms. So that's why there was a wide variety of responses. Whereas they seem to be clear, I don't know whether that's the integrated sector has been around a lot longer, so there has been more talk, but they were very similar.
You did go on, though, to ask them very specific questions about what were the advantages and disadvantages of shared education. Don't you think it's slightly unfair to ask a parent who maybe doesn't know what shared education is, what's the advantages and disadvantages of shared education?
We wanted to also see what their understanding, first of all, was, but as I said, we weren't sure ourselves of where that shared definition was coming from, so we didn't then want to approach with saying we've pulled it from this, but it may not be correct.
Yeah. And also we've got the raw data here as well that we can certainly share with the committee too, because we thought maybe by not giving it an initial definition of it might actually help you to get a definition that you might be might encourage some discussion for
Yeah, I can't help but think, though, that without a definition, and then when you go on to ask very specific questions around it, you could have even given examples of what shared and educated was, so people, again, asked about advantage and disadvantage, could have used the example given or toyed with. That's why I'm not surprised then to find there's such confusion among parents.
And that's one of the difficulties of doing the online consultation, I have to say, because in the 2012 work, the focus groups, when parents didn't know what shared education was, other parents started giving examples, and then it was, oh yes, and that's actually the benefit of having focus groups, because parents can then bounce ideas off each other. The difficulty with the online consultation is that they don't have that mechanism to do it. So yes, it is a flaw in that. But one of the issues that we did have with this particular with this consultation again was the number of questions allowed per consultation.
Yeah.
So it was trying to get, and it was already a detailed consultation survey, because when we did it ourselves and we have a bit of knowledge on the subject, it was taking us 15 minutes to complete it. So to take a parent,
I'm sure, yeah,
and to have to read through it all and go, it was going to take a little bit longer. So we are aware of that,
yeah.
But it wasn't.
You mentioned the issue about a particular parent group, I think it was, about the grammar issue. Can you expand on that? Is it one particular person, or was it a group of parents that responding to it dropped out because they felt, I think they felt shared education was about comprehensivising the education system? Again, I can't help but think if a definition of shared education hadn't been given at the outset.
Well, no, this one was with the 2012. That was particularly in the 2012 where there was a definition given of shared education based on the Ministerial Advisory Group's definition of it. But yeah, even with that, they did feel that we were trying, as you say, comprehensivise the education system. So that was.
But I think as well in the 2014 recent report that there's still that perception that standards are lower in integrated schools, and I think parents just want to be informed about the benefits. So they were saying that around, would you consider sending your child to, say, an integrated school? Some of them were saying, well, actually no, because a grammar education is better. So there's.
Despite the fact that 2/3 of the respondents were from integrated schools, there was still a perception that the standards in integrated schools weren't as good.
By some.
How many?
It could be between 10 and 20 respondents.
Yes, it's we're numbers here. I couldn't help but say I'd seen the 2012.
Yeah.
It's a survey based on 50 people, and only one. That's why I wouldn't even read too much into 2012 whatsoever, because of the sheer the lack of the numbers in it. But just finally, Chair, on the comment made about religion, and that I think it was most respondents felt that religion should be catered for outside of the school. Again, I can't get away from the fact that 2/3 of the respondents were integrated. But again, integrated education deals with religion inside of the school. Sure, everything, there's not once in any of our education systems is there voices about leaving religion. Where does this come from? How many people was this? Or
I think, just to pick up on that, Nicholas, before you do, I think one of the issues is that even though you send your child to an integrated school, are parents fully aware of what that actually involves? And I'm not saying parents make that decision lightly, but do they actually involve, do they know to ask that question? For some parents, the perception is when they go to integrated school, it's a completely neutral venue, they don't do anything like that. And for other parents, they have a bit more information, they know a bit more about what's actually entailed in it. The religious education certainly, I think, has gained mixed responses from parents, even though the parents who do send their children to integrated schools, they do sometimes. Some of the parents did feel that, well, religion shouldn't be taught in that school at all, or some parents felt, well, actually, it should be taught, it should be addressed, that there are different religions and it shouldn't just be ignored. And I think that's where the numbers were mixed, because even though the parents did send their child to an integrated education school, their views are still different.
Oh, yeah. I think for me, on a whole, looking at this, the real, I suppose, analysis or answer out of this is the sort of confusion around the definition of shared and integrated, but taking that this survey and it didn't provide a definition, I think it is, I don't know how much we can read into the findings other than the fact that there's no clear blue water around definitions. It's a missed opportunity.
If not, I mean, we did this just to try and get a bit of a snapshot, to be honest with you. It wasn't meant to be a sort of heavily researched social scientist type of a piece of work, but even just the fact of if nothing else comes out of what we have done, if it is just to say, well, there needs to be a clear definition, and that if that's the key finding that we can provide for you today, then that's the key finding.
And the parents are interested.
And the parents want to be involved in it.
Yeah. Again, I noticed there was only 6 parents from the Fermanagh area, perhaps our area of strongest shared education examples. I wonder would we've got different feedback there too, but it's just a thought. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Newton.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Ms McKeown and Ms McGee for coming to the committee. Forgive me if I missed it, but when you were doing your summary of the findings, on page 4 of your 2014 report, under the area ways forward to improve shared stroke integrated education. You'd made reference to the parents suggested that all teacher training degrees should be joint. How strong was that feeling within the parents?
Check, I'm not sure the raw data on that one is.
I don't have numbers exactly, because a lot of the questions, it was a matter of sitting down and counting how many responses. But there was a strong feeling from parents that if we are to move forward and we're encouraging children to share, therefore it should come at all levels of society, and that teachers should be modelling this as well as parents modelling this as well. There was a small grouping of parents who were in favour of having a joint campus. It wasn't something that was specifically asked, but parents did make reference to it.
We could go back and have a look at that
and count them and
get those
send it to
numbers
you
for you, if that's helpful.
No, that's it. You'd used the word you felt it was strong, but in the report it says suggested, as opposed to any strength behind the proposal. It's obviously it's outside. It's more in the DEL area than in the education area. But yeah, I'd be interested just to know.
I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. No one else has indicated. Can I thank you for your time this morning and for the work that you put into this? I think it's been very useful.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if we just move then to correspondence, we have 17 items and one tabled item. Members are happy. I'm quite content if you wish to indicate just as we move through. I'll highlight a couple perhaps that we need to take action on, or just to draw to your attention. 8.5 was the legislative consent motion on public service pension schemes, and I know we've already referred to pensions earlier in the meeting. Committee for Finance and Personnel has written regarding a proposed legislative consent motion on public service pension schemes. Refers to an unintended policy consequence of the coalition government's decision to allow greater flexibility in respect of pension cash-ins. The LCM is designed to prevent members of public sector defined benefit schemes cashing in their benefit early. If this happens en masse, I suppose there could be quite a pressure placed on the public sector pension pot. So if members are content that we maybe write to DE just to seek their views on this. Okay, and if we do that. We also have the Brazilian education delegation are coming up to Parliament Buildings on the 13th of November, and that's in room 29 at 3:30. So again, if you're interested in getting involved with that, their visits in connection with the Belfast Girls Model. So that might be of interest to at least one member of our committee.
Thank you.
Seeing as all politics is local. Okay, so if you do wish to attend that, if you could let committee office know, they would appreciate that. Sorry, did you indicate?
Yeah. No, Chair, it's just to do with the Sentinus invite, an event that I think you and myself attended. I thought it was quite interesting what was actually being said at that event, and it raised some concerning issues about the whole STEM and how we actually implement that within our schools, because there was an entire sector of industry which was saying that, sorry, but nowhere near enough is actually being done around their aspect of STEM within education, and that's the whole software programming and IT industry. And I thought it was interesting because what they were pointing out was that sector will have job opportunities of over 22,000 job opportunities in Northern Ireland in the next 3 years. Now, I don't think any other sector of industry comes anywhere close to having those sort of job opportunities, but what they were finding was that it seems to be the poor relation when it comes to STEM within our schools and even into our third level education. So I'm just wondering, as a committee, is there anything we can do with the department to actually encourage the IT aspect of the STEM education within the school sectors, because we're already seeing a huge shortage of people coming out with that type of qualification in industry. In fact, I think anybody who comes out with a software program in IT result in education of any description, there's actually 10 jobs for every individual that comes out in that sector. But it's not being encouraged, even within the school sectors, as a career choice. And there's very little understanding of the career opportunities within it, within education as well. So I'm just wondering, is there something that could be proactively done to try and change that perception within our schools?
I attended that event. I think what sort of struck me was the appeal, really, from the teacher from Wallace, really, where she was asking that it become a requirement to teach in school, because at the moment I think there was only 35 minutes a week given to year 9s, and then moving forward, then it became just sort of optional. So I think, that was quite strong. Mr. Hazard.
Thanks. I agree with a large part of what Jonathan said there. In fact, I'm not sure to what extent we can do this, but I know the Down High and Downpatrick are very good at it and very good at attracting people. I think they're also the only school in the north where they attract girls also to do it at an A-level stage, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know if there's a way to communicate with the school or in any sort of official capacity as a committee to maybe explore how they go about it, what potential they see, what do they do with careers in computing, because they apparently do it very well. But also into the careers angle, remember this, we're going to ask the department, in and around the review that's done the careers advice, to what extent did this play a part of it, and who offers advice on the potential careers route when these items such as computer programming is discussed.
Mr. Newton.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think, am I not right in thinking that there is another body that is the equivalent of Sentinus, specifically promoting the IT sector?
You're thinking about Matrix?
Well, there's Matrix, which is
a Momentum, isn't that the offshot of it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what is the status of Sentinus? Is it a sector skills council? And is there another sector skills council that has a specific remit for promoting the IT industry? I think that there needs to be, I mean, I'm not in any way disagreeing, there needs to be, I think, a joined upness between interested bodies, Chair, initiative. But Jonathan's right in terms of the importance of it for the future.
And it might be something we obviously, I think, communicate to the department, but I think maybe it might be an opportunity for us to have a conversation with others to see what the best pathway is in order to try to resolve that.
Just following on from that, in terms of that joined upness, the department are doing a curriculum review at the minute too. When will we get that? Because particularly that whole idea of STEM and that in our primary schools is there and world about us, but we would like to see what the outcome from there is. So I think it's all related to what Jonathan and other people are saying.
Chair, the World Around Us review, which has been undertaken by ETI, it will report before Christmas. I've learned the Chief Inspector actually emailed me the other day just about that. What the committee could do is just write to the department about the uptake of there are GCSEs and A-levels in programming, which are relatively new, so we can ask about the uptake and also perhaps ask about teacher CPD in support of those. Do you also want to write to, is it Down High School?
So Down High and Downpatrick, yeah. I was at the prize given last week, and they made specific reference to being one of the best schools in the north around computer programming and the likes of that. So I don't know protocols around engaging with the schools and stuff, or is it possible to fight ourselves along or how it works? Or?
No difficulty writing to them and asking them to perhaps say what they said at the prize giving, and so members then could make up their mind then if they wanted to visit. They haven't been to Down.
Yeah,
I'm meeting with them next week. So.
Could I also say on that, sometimes that comes down to the enthusiasm and expertise of the member of staff that's there, and then goes to does the programming, whatever. There's a whole There was an event here some time ago. It was Basel was hosting it in terms of science and whatever it was. But there was a primary school principal spoke at it, and the number of teachers coming in with a science or stroke technology qualification to teaching is very few and far between as well. With problems there as well, because there are other ways a lot more lucrative.
Yeah, and also, of course, Downheiser Grammar School. So this isn't an academic, what's perceived. The grammars look after the English and maths and everything else, but this is a break from the norm too. So it could be a particular teacher and anything else. I'm not sure. So.
Well, it's on a similar vein, sorry, Chair. Cookstown High School has been very successful in their programming, and they have been over to Buckingham Palace with their DAVA app. So that's another school that's really good at.
So we haven't been to Cookstown.
Yeah.
So we could write to both of those schools.
Oh, you could.
This might be getting out of hand.
But again, I think it's having that expertise having that
engagement with schools is good. That's what we're here for.
I think again, it's having that expert teacher that's pushing it is probably the key to the school being more successful in that area.
Is there potential to engage with SIA around uptake on the exams, qualifications? What are they doing around that?
Yeah, that would be useful that we write to them to get that information.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, no, thank you very much. There's another piece of correspondence I just want to highlight to members, and that's from the department in relation to the end of key stage assessments. And obviously this was a controversial policy area, and they're proposing a number of measures. It might be useful for us to get a briefing from DE and SIA around that, but also just to broaden that out, maybe just to satisfy ourselves with regards to schools and their response to it. So I'm going to put a further burden on Peter to arrange maybe another stakeholder event, if members are content that we do that, just to explore the outworkings of this amongst the school body.
So this is page 463 of the pack, is the information in question. So this is a letter that the Minister, I think, sent to all principals on Friday about their next steps for end of key stage assessment.
Members content that we take that line?
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers, yes. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments on correspondence?
Yeah. 8.12, and this came up yesterday, is about the transport of students, particularly when schools join up together and whatever else. I've forgotten the term, particularly post-primary schools, that they get using the bus pass and that during the day, or the flexibility. Yes. Somebody had brought that up yesterday.
I raised that.
It might be worthwhile to write to DRD to see what the position is on this, because again, it's a barrier to shared education and a barrier to students having that opportunity, particularly students in the rural area who just couldn't avail of the sharing.
We didn't really get a definitive timescale for when the Minister was likely to report on the recommendations from the Home to School Transport Review. So we may want to. Have we written to them in relation to that as well? Several times. So no, I think that might be a useful thing to do, although in saying that, that's part of really the negotiations, isn't it, around with regards to transport, as to the use of the bus pass.
I think, Chair, the committee wrote to the independent panel that were doing the review, highlighting some concerns around the sessional bus tickets, about their use, about flexibility in their use, and how they're issued in September, they go to the end of June, but most primary kids stop school in early June, and yet paying for the use of sessional tickets which weren't actually going to be used. So I think these issues about flexibility around sessional tickets have been raised by the committee with the independent panel. What the report says, I don't know. So do you want to write to DRD/TransLink on this question? Yes. On flexibility, right, join.
Okay. Any other comments on correspondence? And
the last one would be 8.18 in terms of end of key stage assessments. There's a plea there for us to keep ourselves first in what's happening with end of key stage end of key stage assessments. You know, it'd be useful if the department and CA keep us versed as well, and maybe it might be an idea actually to do what we did with Braniel at one stage when we went out to a local school to look at computer-based assessment at that stage, to look at how end of key stage assessment is working.
So that's in addition to the briefings and having the stakeholder event?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the timing of that, I mean, I think most of the action, as the member probably knows, happens later on in the year.
Yeah.
So that this and likewise stakeholder event might be something we do a little later in the session.
Okay.
Sorry,
Do you want to do it earlier in the session, or do you want to do it later
in the session?
Is that just
We get through all the other stuff like the inquiry and things.
okay? I'll not put you
We'll
under
end
any
up
more
with a
pressure.
stakeholder event every week.
Well, it's good to engage.
I think there would be interest and be interest from members and interest from schools, and it's
yeah.
Thing.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Thank
you. There's a table item then from the minister, and just correspondence, just with respect to the amendments which he intends to make to further consideration stage of the education bill. So there for you to note. And
What page is that on?
that's in your table item.
Oh, the table items, right, okay.
Moving then to our, are you content then that we deal with the other pieces of correspondence as tabled? Okay. The draft forward work programme copy is at page 484 to 488. Unfortunately, Dr. Shuttleworth is unwell, and his briefing on the 19th of November has been deferred due to that. So there has been suggestion that members take a briefing on that date on the budgetary scrutiny. That's from the Assembly Research. So that means that the meeting will commence at the usual time of 10 a.m. then next week. Just to allow for that change then onto the following week. So if members are content, then we agree changes for the forward work programme.
Sure.
Is there any other business?
Just one thing, Chair.
Mr McCausland?
There was a report produced by the Minister there in September, assessment of the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages, application of the Charter in the UK, fourth monitoring report, and then his response to their report. Now, I don't know if it was considered by the committee up to now, but I think it's something we should take a look at. It might be helpful if copies were circulated to members. The other thing tied in with that, in some areas, the response given is that they have been presented with a report entitled Languages for the Future NI Languages Strategy, which is available on the internet. I'm not clear from it. It says at the bottom, Department of Education and then the Centre for Languages, Linguistics and Area Studies. I'm not sure whether they commissioned it from the centre or what the status of it is. It's something they paid for, but it hasn't got an official status or not. But it's key to understanding the other. So if those could be circulated, it'd be helpful because it raises a lot of questions in there. In terms of meeting their commitments to the Charter. The Charter recognises in Northern Ireland two minority languages, two lesser used languages, Irish and Ulster Scots. In this report, the Ulster Scots section gets effectively, when you take out the duplication, it's about 5 lines out of whatever it is, 10, 12 pages. So there are issues in there, and when you look at the second document, Languages for the Future, it's even worse, and yet that's supposed to be the answer to the question. So I think that the department, when you look at it carefully, is falling terribly far short of its requirements under the Charter, and I'm sure it's something that we would need to look at if we're to ensure that Northern Ireland does meet its obligations.
Okay, so just as an action, you're suggesting that members are forward
Circulate
those
with that.
pieces of
Yeah,
information,
and then people would know what we're talking about.
okay, and then you want to return to it then
Yes,
as a comment then maybe
send
next.
in comments on it to Peter that he could circulate.
Okay.
Chair, actually, where the Charter review report is actually, it's in deposited papers in the Central Library, but I'll forward it to members so they can see that. Members might want to take it up. We've already asked for a briefing on the IME report. could ask for it to be for the department to
Included
comment
in
on it at the time.
When are we getting the briefing? Do you know?
I don't know yet. I haven't seen the report yet. I've seen the department's response to the report, but I can't actually get the report. I'm sure it's on the internet now, but it wasn't.
Okay.
Although we may, if that's circulated and there are comments which can be agreed, then just as we could then, or concerns that we could then forward that to the department within the next couple of weeks then, just for them to have that information in advance of them coming to any briefing. Okay, thank you. The attendance information apparently will be published on the Assembly website on the 7th of November. We have an autism paper from Assembly Research, as well as additional information from DE. And at the moment, are you content that we note this? Will we return to it at another stage?
Members want to.
We may return to this.
Where it came from was just one or two people had written suggesting the committee undertake an inquiry into autism provision in schools, and as members are aware, your strategic programme is full with an inquiry, and I anticipate there seem to be at least 4 bills waiting for us. So, sure members, well, anyway, that's why the paper was there, to give you a background to it.
Okay, so it might be useful then if we're having conversations that's there as a reference to.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The next committee meeting will be in Senate Chamber next Wednesday, the 12th of November. And if members are content, we shall adjourn.
Go. Excellent.